What's up? What's up? What's up? It is your girl, Survivor Speaks, back with the live. So we were listening to the victim of R. Kelly, finally speaking out in her own words. She dropped the book, "What's Up, Shorty." Um, so she didn't lose her voice. The world just chose not to hear her. That's her words. So this is from a survivor who finally told her story in the book, Who's Watching Shorty. Not rumors, not headlines, her truth. So we're going to go over the full reading and react to the what we're listening to on Survivor Speaks Now. All right. So we are definitely talking about, let me bring her up, give you guys a visual. This is who she is today. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful person. The first listen that we had was kind of hard. I see that her aunt Sparkle is out here, trying to get ahead of what was mentioned in the book. And we read the book up until R. Kelly was no longer dealing with Sparkle. I'm going to say this right up front before I run my disclaimer, because we will be listening to the book we will be listening to the book on the fear, yeah, we will. Mm-hmm. We will be listening to the book under the fair use guidelines, and so I have to do commentary to it. The biggest thing, YouTube has made a lot of changes. Please like the video, leave a comment based on the changes that they made. We want to do that. But I like to play my disclaimer before we get into the listening party, because I want to get right into it. But I just want to preference this, but I'll wait till after my disclaimer.
This video is being shown to you under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, education, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Smash that like button. Let's go.
And we are back. So before we get into listening to the book, I like to preference this with everything that happened to Reshona Lafair, everything that happened to Reshona Lafair, is at the hands of her aunt Sparkle. R. Kelly, he definitely doesn't get a pass from me. I don't listen to any of his music. I don't stream any of his music. I do none of that. But however, I am an unbiased, channel. And I do like to play devil's advocate when we learn information, right? So I have to call a spade a spade. And according to Reshona's words, and she didn't say it like this, but I'm saying it, everything that happened to Reshona Lafair is Sparkle's fault. Meanwhile, we see Sparkle crying everywhere, even on that LMN Surviving R. Kelly special. She was still manipulating the public. She is the sole person, the sole reason for this girl and what happened to her. This does not exonerate R. Kelly, because there was many other victims. I'm just simply talking about Reshona Lafair in this case. Sparkle told her niece, next time you go to the studio, ask R. Kelly to be your godfather. She knew this. She knew this. She knew that Reshona already had godparents. So Reshona felt uncomfortable, she said. How do I do that? She said, sit on his lap, rub his head, and ask him to be your godfather. Sparkle, you are trash. I don't care how you try to come out here and spin it. There is no other way to spin it. By the time we get to the end of this book, you will hear Reshona say in her own words. Yeah. By the time we get to the end of this video, you will hear Reshona say, so many things. I just lost my train of thought. If you're in here, please hit the like, leave a comment. YouTube has made some changes, and we want to make sure that we're able to get this video out into the algorithm for educational purposes. There will be no slandering of this young lady in the chat. We need to keep this where it was. She was 12 years old. She was already successful before she was introduced to R. Kelly. We're going to come to a part in the book where she's going to tell you how he came up with this story, just master manipulator, to get her to leave the group that was already formed prior to her meeting him. All right, let's get right into it. We're starting off where we left off on, today is Friday, on Wednesday. And so let's go. You'll be hearing the book, but I'm not going to bring it over here, be doing too much.
Chapter 3. Never Have I Ever. 7th grade was a tale of two Reshonas. I wasn't touring with For the Cause, so I was able to trade in the gigs, practice, and disruptive, though fun, European tours for all the trimmings at Emerson Junior High School. From science projects and mystery meat in the cafeteria to cringy school dances, my basketball team's winning streak, and the whirlwind of my best friend's crushes. Everything was normal. Mostly. Good even. Except that I didn't talk about my crush. And my sleepovers were strictly for the other Reshona. My whole school knew about my celebrity godfather. Chi-Town, the city of broad shoulders, was known for its wicked winds, deep dish pizza, and R. Kelly. Why would I keep my connection to Robert a secret? I was only too happy to have his thundering voice cheering me on in my basketball games, alongside my mom's, dad's, and little Greg's. I was already a solid B+ student, admired for my skill on the basketball court, and well-liked for my fun personality. The addition of Robert to all of that just heightened my appeal. And who would say no to a little more junior high popularity? I surely didn't. Sometimes I hung out with friends after school, and several times a week, I'd hop the train to Robert's Chicago track studio. There, I'd do my homework and then walk around, listen to the music being developed by Robert and his bevy of musicians, and ask Robert's runner to get my favorite snack to eat, a twice-baked potato from a little spot near the studio. Whenever my dad had a session at Robert's studio, I'd tag along then too, and casually mention I was staying for the weekend to spend time with my godmother Andrea and help her with her and Robert's firstborn daughter. I can't remember ever being told no. In public, I was the perfect goddaughter. But in private, Robert called me his heaven-sent secret lover. Feeling needed by him was the lure. Even though I had heard Unsparkle's stories of her own sexual relationships with Robert and her various boyfriends, I didn't understand what my own romantic feelings or sexual desires would feel like, or how my heart could make my body want things and my mind believe things that Robert said and did. Sure, Usher was my celebrity crush, but he lived in my teenage daydreams, except the one time I met him at Robert's studio and Robert said he was jealous, when all I did was smile at Usher and gush about loving his music. Robert was real. With Robert's sure hand steadying my pubescent body, I became intoxicated with a rush of thoughts, feelings, and experiences I had with him. I didn't know he was studying me when he touched me, that all his words were spoken with intent, and every hurdle I bounded over, his hand clutching mine, was designed to make me invested in what I now know was abuse. At the time, it didn't feel like abuse. I had no idea that he hastened my sexual awakening and weaponized my teenage gullibility. Being Robert's secret lover was delicious, even though it was a little dangerous. My heart was exploding in my chest. My body felt good, and I believed those thrills and shivers could only come from him. But I don't care how good it might have felt. A 14-year-old girl should not be turned out by a 31-year-old man. Full stop. My teen mind was as scrambled about this issue as it could be. When your body starts to have sexual feelings and desires, it seems like whoever can make you feel good is the right person for you, no matter their age. But the man who said age ain't nothing but a number lied. Moments of intimacy felt special in the beginning. Robert would lay his head on my chest and tell me things. Even more than sexual ecstasy, what I most craved was being Robert's confidant, his special secret jewel, his soft place to land. In the quiet, when it was him sharing difficult stories from his childhood or what was bothering him with his musicians or his family, I believed that our relationship was right. I believed that I was what he needed. You know what you are, Sho? You know what you are to me? No. You're my angel. God sent you to me. You think so? I know so. 'Cause you don't judge me. You accept me for who I am. My smile was loud enough for Robert to hear. He cocked his head and poked out his lips so I could kiss them. I did. These haters out here wouldn't understand what we got. They don't want me to have you. They want me all fucked up in my mental. I frowned. Are you? I didn't know what he would say, but the warmth that spread through me like maple syrup on pancakes made me want to hear whatever he wanted to say. And that moment, I was his safe place. And that felt good. Not now. Not anymore. Not with you, baby. His voice was just a whisper, but it set off fireworks inside of me. Robert ran his thumbs over his eyebrows and then over mine. His action, a secret sign of love for me that he'd do whenever he was on stage, sent a wave of contentment through me. My mind turned over this complicated and beautiful feeling of being needed by a man so rich and so powerful, so loved by millions of people. But he needed me. Will you always be here for me, Sho? His words felt heavy. What would always look like? Would I always be a secret? His question made my swirl of thoughts and feelings a little more complicated and less beautiful. Yeah, I guess so. Then he lifted his head up. Damn, Sho. He looked at me square in the eye and held the stare until I had to look away. I just opened up my whole fucking heart to you, and that's what you say? I guess so. What the fuck, Sho? I mean, God sent you to me. I just said it. Are you gonna be less than the angel you're supposed to be? I felt tears gathering in the corner of my eyes. I didn't know how to answer him right, but what I said was clearly more wrong than I imagined.
The manipulation that this man, the manipulation, child, the manipulation. Now he has this child. I need, if you're gonna stick around for the rest of the book, to listen to how he had her living. And once again, I'm going to say her parents didn't know at first, which that's something that I was glad that was cleared up in the book from her own mouth. But at some point they did learn, but they all was manipulated. At the same time, I'm going to say everybody goes through hardships. When they found out is when they should have alerted the authorities. So that's where I'm holding their feet to the fire. She actually holds their feet to the fire as well. Those are still her parents. And she tells why. Let me tell y'all this. I'm still having a hard time with wrapping my head around. The first trial, R. Kelly, remember they said that he sent the family away. Well, he sent the family away up to the time that he went on trial, right? And they were asking, where is Reshona? And I'm only telling y'all this because we already passed this point in the book. Where's Reshona? You want to know where Reshona was? Reshona was outside on his tour bus, on the back of his tour bus, while he was in the courtroom claiming he's innocent, child. I said, you was where? She was there. Let's go.
He took my silence as an opportunity to answer the question in my mind. He lifted his head so I could see his eyes, which I was surprised to see glistening like mine. You know, you confuse me sometimes, Sho. I mean, you understand me on a level that is beyond anybody and anything I've ever experienced. You so far beyond grown-ass women. His voice trailed off, and he shook his head. I don't know what God gave you for me. I mean, your agape love and bulletproof loyalty. It's like you got everything for me, Sho. I don't hardly understand it. Maybe you don't either. But I love you deep. His lips brushed mine. I felt so full that I thought I might burst. And yet, I wanted more. Do you love me, Sho? I nodded violently. I couldn't trust myself to speak. He pulled up one corner of his lips into a smile. I can't hear you. He drank my immature nipple into his mouth like a baby hungry for milk. My body was aflame. Then he stopped. The answer is yes, Sho. Your answer to me is always yes. Yes, I whispered. Yes, what? Yes, Robert? We were the only two people in the room. I was afraid I was messing up again. Call me Daddy. The word clanged around in my head and dumped ice water on the flames that had threatened to consume me only a moment before. Daddy? I called my father Daddy. I loved my daddy, but didn't lie down naked with him and please him like I did with Robert. Did you hear me, Sho? Yes. Yes, what? But I call my dad. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Are you bringing another man into my bed? No, Robert. I mean, well, what do you want to call me? Robert. But I knew that was the wrong answer. Tell me. I don't know. I lowered my head, ashamed. You should, because I already told you. Robert's breath was hot on my face. I wanted to turn my face away from him, but I knew that would make him angry. What we have is special, Sho. If you love me like I love you, then you need to do what I say. Because I love you so hard it hurts, baby. And I can protect you. Do you understand? Yes, Daddy.
Crazy work.
It felt like my brain turned on a white noise machine, just as a new wave of excitement moved through Robert's body. It was time for me to be his angel again. It was a tall order. Being Robert's angel, Robert's best girl, Robert's sexual fix, and creative inspiration meant I was only as good as Robert said I was. Only as good as my ability and willingness to love him the way he wanted me to. But every time I arrived at some new magical plane of existence that was so special and so right, then he had to test it and stretch it somehow. Being Robert's lover meant I kept having to become more of what he wanted me to be. Yes, I was the best thing, but never enough. It's time for the next level, baby. I had been studying the hangnail on my left thumb and resisting the urge to chew on it in front of Robert when he spoke. I looked up. You heard me, Sho? Of course. We're the only ones in here. I looked down so I could roll my eyes without him seeing me do it. Next level? Even in the dim light of the studio room that had become our secret hiding place whenever I was there, Robert's eyes shined like crude oil slicks floating atop a midnight blue ocean. I knew that look. It made me sick. The hairs on my body stood up. We overdue. Robert's voice quivered with excitement. He had been getting bored with me, with us. His blue-black eyes told me he was about to change all that. But I didn't want any more changes. What part of my body was going to be pressed into service of his latest fetish? Would it be my ears? My nose? Something else? I felt like every part of me had to be ready for Robert's next level. I started chewing on my hangnail. I didn't want him to see the panic that pounded in my chest and made my breathing shallow, or my eyebrows hiked up into 2 question marks. Sho, you ain't answering? You heard me? Yes, Daddy. I thought about my chemistry quiz that I had just bombed at school. It was all about how when an atom's electrons get into their excited states, they may jump from one level to a higher one, or show something different, like a different color. Robert was like that. The blue that gleamed in his eyes was from a new idea that excited him. When Daddy talks, you answer. Hear me? He made his voice quiet, but blue flames leaped in his eyes. Yes, Daddy. I felt the heat of his breath threaten to melt my frozen face and reveal the cesspool of emotions gurgling within me. That's why I hate chemistry. I cleared my throat, choked down the sour stomach that crept up in my mouth, tried to block my mind of any thoughts. The best I could do was psych myself up for whatever Robert wanted from me. Sex is a form of art, Sho, an expressive art, and I'm the artist. I need to express myself inside of you, not just on
Lord.
top or under you. You need to stop stalling, because I'm ready for you, and you know you're ready for me too. Your body's calling me. He sang the last sentence to me, a reference to his 1993 song, and chuckled.
What up, Nessa? What up? What up? Thank you so much for coming through.
Virginity, that is, my avoidance of the act of sexual intercourse, was the only thing I had managed to keep from Robert. He had tested and measured me, all without penetration. Maybe this was what my English teacher meant when he was trying to explain to my class the other day the meaning of a distinction without a difference and couldn't think of a good example. Maybe I was drawing a line in my mind and calling myself a virgin a distinction that didn't make a difference, but it made a difference to me. Apparently, it made a difference to Robert too. I was 15 now, a sophomore in high school, and Robert said I was ready. A man needs things from a woman. I'm a sexual man, show. You know that. God has given me my musical gifts, my sexual urges, and you. He done gave me all of that. He licked his lips. And show, you already know it's mine. I've already had you in a lot of ways. This is how we get closer to each other. He kissed me. You see what's around me, show?
Shame.
I can have anybody I want. You know that.
Thanks,
but I
Nessa.
choose you. So quit acting scared now. You've done everything else. I've seen it, touched it, licked it. You don't need to tell me no shit about what you can't do. It's what we need to go higher in our love. I watched him masturbate casually through his sagged jeans as his body grew more excited in anticipation of my yes. He penetrated me with his stare. But if you say no, I'm finna find someone else who'll say yes. I followed his logic. My body had already felt, done, and tasted more things than I wanted to admit. Things I was embarrassed by and ashamed of. So why was I holding out? I could see the thought bubble above Robert's head as he licked his lips meaningfully. I can be replaced. The seed of jealousy that had been planted within me 2 years before, when I knew Unsparkle was giving Robert something he wanted, and that had been watered by the pressure to please him, now sprouted as fear. If I said no, there was another girl, woman, boy, who would say yes. This was how he compelled my yes. But what's a girl's yes to the full size of a grown man? Robert poured himself into me, and I responded. I'm human after all. But I knew I had lost the thing I tried to hold on to. And I knew there would be more dares and new levels that scared me. With every thrust of him that crushed the breath out of my lungs, I began to understand that Robert's passion was an addiction, his and mine. After he came, he whispered into the space above my head, best remember how I made you feel just now, show. How I love to love you. The weight of his words was heavier than his body on top of me. I shook my head, my braids dragging across his chest. My basketball team had won the game, and we were now in the playoffs. Neither mom or dad would be able to make our first playoff game due to prior commitment. But when I told Robert I'd be flying solo, he had a different idea. I can come cheer on my favorite girl. Oh yeah? Robert's words sounded innocent, but somewhere in my body, I felt like a test or a dare was coming. Something. Why you saying it like that, show? You know I'm a fan of basketball and a fan of you. I knew. I also knew that whenever Robert came, he stole all the attention. I mean, people came to the games regardless of whether he was there, of course. But when he came, everybody cranked up the dial on their performance. Both our team and our opponents played harder. The fans cheered louder, the refs were more dramatic, and the spectators gawked at Robert and tried to get pictures with him, no matter what was happening on the court. It was fun to have him sometimes. But this was the playoffs. I didn't want him to distract me or make the refs and our opponents feel like they had to put on a show for him. I know. My voice was flat. Daddy, I added. Then what's with the face? Is it that you got a boyfriend you don't want me to know about? He smiled, but his voice had an edge. No, Daddy. Well, all right then. Besides, you got some cuties up in your school, don't you think? I frowned. Girls? Sure. There were plenty of cute girls, and cute boys for that matter. But I wasn't checking for any of them like that. I was so consumed with loving Robert that I hadn't given much thought to who else I might like. Robert liked threesomes, though, and I had been intimate with several girls and women of Robert's choosing when the mood struck him. But even though those experiences were designed to produce a sexual response in me, I didn't think I was a lesbian. At least I thought I preferred boys over girls. But Robert never asked me what I preferred or who I liked. It was always about who he liked and what he wanted us to do to each other, to please him. If we got some pleasure out of it, that was like a bonus. But girls at school were different. Girls at school were my classmates and teammates. I had a relationship with them outside of Robert, so him crushing on them made me nervous. You worried, Sho? No need for that. Ain't nobody at that school gonna replace you if that's what you're concerned about. You my best one. You know that. But they're my friends, Daddy. And I thought you didn't want anyone to know. We not gonna tell just anyone, are we? No, Daddy. Of course not. I felt dizzy. Then you find some cuties with tight lips, he snickered. And maybe we'll have some fun. We'll see. You can just introduce me to some of your girlfriends who could be down. I'll let you know if I agree. My team lost the game. We were out of the playoffs, but our loss didn't ruin the energy in the gym. We were at the school of the opposing team, and they weren't accustomed to having R. Kelly attend a girls' basketball game. Robert was his regular charming self, smiling for pictures with kids, parents, and coaches, and entire families at every time out for the entire game. I was trying to focus, but it was hard. Squeals of delight broke out at random times, and my teammates seemed as distracted as I was. After all the hubbub died down following the game, I walked over to Robert with a schoolmate I'll call Brittany. Brittany was about a year older and liked to make scandalous jokes about how she knew R. Kelly had to be a satisfying lover because of the lyrics to his songs. Usually I just laughed and shook my head to brush off her comments, but this time I brought her over to Robert to see if he liked her. She was shy and kept shooting her eyes over at him, unable to look at him directly. Girl, you making me nervous now, Robert chuckled. Why don't the three of us get a picture? Robert put his arms around both of our waists while his driver snapped a picture. Nice meeting you, Brittany. Maybe Reshona can bring you by the studio sometime. Okay. Brittany was breathless. On the next school day, I went on a little fishing expedition. When Brittany and I could speak privately, I worked the conversation around to Robert in the way he had coached me. Girl, you lucky. I'm sure I couldn't control myself around R. Kelly. He is just too fine. What makes you think I have? I made a coy smile and waited. Wait, what, Sean? What are you telling me right now? Nothing if you don't lower your damn voice and calm down. Okay, my bad. But what the hell are you saying? Brittany's voice was an excitable whisper. I mean, like you said, he's sexy as all get out, so I do have a little crushy crush. Brittany smacked her lips. Sounds like your crush ain't like my crush. Sounds like you did something about it. Maybe I did. I tried to follow Robert's script, gauge her interest, tease her, but not give details. See if she can keep secrets. Then spill it, Sean. Suppose I tell you something, and then I hear it come back to me. Then what? Girl, you know you can trust me. I don't kiss and tell. How do I know that? 'Cause Brittany couldn't think of anything that would be an adequate measure. Well, have you heard shit about me with anyone? No. Maybe that's because you haven't been with anyone. I shot back. Brittany looked offended. Well, I have. Hmm. I looked at her pursed lips and arms crossed over her chest. I didn't want to make her mad. Robert had already given me the sign that he liked her, so I couldn't mess things up. Okay, tell me the most embarrassing thing you've ever done. You mean like fart in public? Brittany seemed genuinely confused. No, everybody's done that. I rolled my eyes and thought again. I needed to be more specific. Who's the most embarrassing person you've ever kissed? Brittany looked sheepish. Pinky, she whispered. But that's because this guy I like said he liked her. But if I kissed her, then he'd kiss me. Okay, I nodded and smiled. Would you kiss me if you had to? For R. Kelly? I'd do whatever.
That's horrible.
Brittany looked through me. She must have been seeing Robert in her imagination. You really got it bad for him. I laughed. Sounds like maybe you do too. Maybe. Her words brought me back to the job I was supposed to be doing. I played coy again. Let's talk at the end of the week. If I hear anything about this conversation, I'm going to tell folks about you and Pinky. But if you know how to keep private stuff private, then maybe you'll get to tell R. Kelly just how much you like him. Oh shit, Sean. Really? I'll talk to you Friday, Brittany. I'm going to pee my pants. Don't do that. Just be cute on Friday, okay? Sure, okay. Overcome with excitement, Brittany hugged me hard. I watched her walk away. She was cute in the ways Robert liked. Petite with a small waist and a heart-shaped butt, and just the right sexy schoolgirl wardrobe to accentuate both. So since she was his type, she was mine. Does that make me a lesbian? Or at least bi? I didn't know. I had kissed girls Robert wanted me to kiss. Sometimes they were blindfolded and naked when I first saw them. I knew how their bodies looked, but not their faces. How they kissed, but not how they talked. But I knew Brittany's name and face. I knew how she talked and the clothes she liked to wear. She was a real person to me. What would it mean if I kissed her? If I touched her? Friday came. Brittany could keep secrets. Robert picked us both up from school that day, and I learned what it was like to kiss her. It felt like my submission and Robert's approval. What was it like to touch her? It felt like Brittany's willingness and Robert's pleasure. Brittany's sexual experiences had only been with peers up until that point. I was the knowledgeable one, skilled at teaching less experienced girls like Brittany what Robert liked while keeping them willing. Brittany wanted to learn whatever I had to teach her.
So I'm gonna do a little commentary here because I have to. So it is so sad that not only did he manipulate this girl, he took her virginity and then had her out there recruiting other kids to come to where he is so that he can have relations that grown people can't even handle with these children. I'm going to say this once again. Everything that's happening to this girl right now, Sparkle, you are the reason. You are the reason. Everything that happened to her happened. Okay, Nessa. Okay. Thank you. What up? What up? What up? Um, yeah, you just got a free membership today. Okay. Yeah, it is crazy. I just need people to know, for educational purposes, that R. Kelly gets no pass from me, but Sparkle needs to be held accountable. You're going to learn by listening to this book that this young lady said she was tired of everybody telling her story. She wasn't ready to tell her story yet. Yet Sparkle went on Element when they had the Surviving R. Kelly special, crying. She didn't mention her by name, but telling her version of this girl's story. But she neglected to put out there that she is the person that told her to go sit on R. Kelly's lap, rub his head, and ask him if he would be her godfather. So her parents at this point didn't know because he was married to Andrea Kelly at the time. Andrea Kelly became her godmother by extension, and she doesn't blame Angela for anything because Angela did not know. Angela's treating her like she's R. Kelly's godchild, but she saw some of the abuse and witnessed some of the abuse that Andrea went through. What she can hear, and Andrea was locked in a room, just like these other girls were locked into different places. So we're gonna get right back into it. Once again, this is Reshona Lafair and Reshona, Lafair, and it's in her own words. So here we go. Welcome, AOBD.
Chapter 4, Star Student. You know how a song gets stuck in your head so deep that you can't shake it? Well, given the...
Oh, and I forgot, please hit the like button before you forget and have to run. YouTube has changed a lot of things, and the like feature in the commenting in the comments goes a long way on YouTube. We also do have another way to support the channel. It is not mandatory, but we do accept donations. So we put it back into the platform, to make some upgrades and stuff, but you can always support the channel for free by just hitting the like button, subscribe button, and leaving a comment, or having a conversation in the comment about this. This is educational stuff, and I believe that her book will help others out there because this is coming from her.
Fact that I was in a situationship with R&B's international hitmaker. I was all too willing to let Robert's every lyric live rent-free in my mind and heart. For me, there were more than just earworms. Robert's sexually charged lyrics were the ultimate playbook, a cheat sheet for his sexual preferences, cravings, and turnoffs. Why was this important? Because I needed Robert to want me most of all. I knew that I wasn't Robert's only girl. He had a wife, for crying out loud, whom the world knew to be my godmother. But even though it seemed to be wrong for him to love me when he had a wife, he said she was okay with his lifestyle. Also, I believed him when he said that our love couldn't play by the world's rules, that it was bigger and stronger than anything he had ever experienced. And since it was for me too, I just blocked what was wrong about it from my mind and focused on what was right. Have you ever wanted something so bad that you're willing to do whatever you need to get it? And when you feel like it can be snatched from you at any moment, you can feel like you want it even more. To the core of my being, I felt myself to be who Robert said I was, and worth the price he put on me. As he explained it, his love for me made him willing to lie for me, to jeopardize his entire home life and career for me. He made sure I always knew just how high the stakes were for him, and I believed them to be equally high for me. The only thing that I felt, as much as my love for Robert, was my jealousy toward all the other females who were a part of his world sexually. I didn't really differentiate between the women who were 18 and above and those who were underage, like me. I couldn't, because if I did, I'd have to go down the rabbit hole of, well, what about you, Reshona? Why are you in a full-on sexual relationship with a grown man? Despite all the grown-up activity that had become my day-to-day, I lacked the mental bandwidth to have the conversation with myself. Here's the thing about being exposed to sex and sexual manipulation as a young teenager. It opens you up to a world that you're not mentally capable of understanding. My child's mind didn't know that the way my body responded to what Robert did to it was straight biology and that he didn't have some sort of magical power over me. It felt like he did, like he alone could make my body feel sexy. You might clutch your pearls at the thought of a girl 13, 14, or 15 wanting to be sexy to anyone, much less a grown man. But while there are teen girls who are only thinking about their next game of double dutch or catching their favorite Disney TV show, lots are learning what the culture says it means to be a woman in training. Teen girls wonder whether people see them as attractive, how to be more desirable, and if they'll ever have a boyfriend or girlfriend. They want to be a part of the pretty girls club. Why? Because most of the fashion, music, and popular culture teach girls to be eye candy that boys and men won't be able to resist. For me, I was trying to grow into all of these new feelings and expectations and wrestling with my previous identity as a tomgirl, all while receiving oral sex from a grown-ass man who the world called my godfather. I didn't have any idea what it meant to be groomed by an older and more experienced person, and that Robert was manipulating me to do and be what he wanted. I couldn't understand that when Robert explained things to me, he used my youth and naivete to gaslight me and make me question everything my parents had ever taught me about honesty or doing the right thing. I didn't know that love bombing was one of the strategies Robert used regularly to make me feel closer to him and indebted to him at the same time. While I was living in the emotional chaos that I believed to be love and devotion to Robert, I couldn't have any perspective on the reality of what was going on. I was just so needy for his possessive and oppressive brand of love that I wanted him to want me the most. I needed him to love me the best, and I practiced being the girl he wanted. Robert was an exacting teacher. He knew how far to push me to keep me off balance and on a constant quest to fulfill his growing list of expectations. He taught me that jealousy, fear, and especially obedience were his love languages. People do shit they don't want to do for the folks they love every damn day of the week show. Know that. Yes, Daddy. I was an excellent student. Under Robert's tutelage, I became expert at lying to my parents. He trained me on what to say, how to say it, what my body language should be, if ever they pushed back on my desire to spend time with my God family. Maybe it was my perfect performances that kept any growing concerns from my parents at bay. Or maybe it all looked good from their perspective. It was hard to say. With Robert, there always seemed to be an expiration date on his test, no matter how high my grade. I was only as good as my last exercise of submission, and loyalty and blind obedience were the only love currency Robert would accept from me. Whenever I questioned his request, or even hesitated to comply, Robert had a form of correction that he knew would get me back in line. Sometimes I had to watch another person come and pleasure him in the way he had wanted me to. It was horrible to be forced to watch someone else's naked body do what I refused to do. When they came in, they were often blindfolded, so they couldn't see me. I was his secret, and he didn't want anyone to be able to identify me. Sometimes after I watched, he would force me to join and have me perform a sex act with the blindfolded person as a test. It always felt like a test that I had better pass the first time. Despite the fact that I was his best girl, who tried to follow his every instruction and who always wanted his approval, even when I was uncomfortable, there was always a steady stream of new tests. I didn't know how many others there were in addition to his wife, Andrea. But he had a way of making you want to strive to be the top of the class and obeying and pleasing him. After I brought in Brittany and then Pinky too to engage in threesomes with Robert, he started to have sex with them without me. In the twisted logic I was operating under, their secret meetings with Robert felt like they had betrayed me. I stopped being friends with them because of it. I remember times when I did act uncomfortable about performing the perverted sex acts Robert wanted from me. Even going back to when he was sleeping with Unsparkle, and there were plenty of things I still hadn't done, like sexual intercourse, Robert would act wounded, and his energy would shift if I hesitated. "Don't worry about it, Show. You don't have to do it," Robert said, his voice flat and shoulders sagging. I sat there, feeling bad because Robert felt bad.
This is
Then,
crazy.
because I couldn't figure out what else to do, I started biting my nails. Robert began rummaging through some of his videotapes. "Look at this, Show." I sat silently as the exposed privates of Robert and a woman I couldn't identify came into life in front of me. Robert liked tight camera angles, so I squinted my eyes until they were nearly slits to block the graphic sights and sounds that loomed large on the TV screen. Seeing movement on the couch, I shot my eyes over to Robert. His hand was down his pants. Robert heaved and stopped the tape. "That's what I'm talking about, Show. That's how I want you to be for Daddy." I had no words. "If she could do me like that, and I don't give a shit about her, I know you could blow my mind, baby. Can't you do that for Daddy?" I watched Robert's eyes scan my
Child, full on just grooming on top of grooming on top of grooming. If you're here and you just dropped in, please hit the like button. It's a free way to support the channel. And leave a comment down below if you can. So that we can get this out in the algorithm. YouTube has made some changes, and so definitely the likes and commenting play a big part in the platform, and it's a free way to support the platform. I just thought I'd take a break in between and give, because she's speaking real heavy. Need you to realize that at this age she's 15. So even though he groomed her from about 12, started on the phone, you know, and middle finger to Sparkle, because Sparkle it fed this young lady to R. Kelly, and she is the reason why. So all of the tears we saw on Element, all of the interviews that we heard on the Breakfast Club, everything that we heard, middle finger to it all, because she is the sole person. She is the sole reason that this even happened to Reshona Lafair. And I'm glad that she came out with this book in her own words, and she's telling her truth. And in her truth, we need to realize Sparkle fed her to the big bad wolf. All right, here we go with some more disturbing. Listen to the manipulation that R. Kelly is doing with this young girl at the age of 15, gaslighting her, guilt tripping her, and all of the above.
face. He pulled his lips into a tight line and a look of disapproval. I can't believe you're gonna let other women bust my nuts while you just sit there.
Lord help us all.
I sat there,
It's the trigger
scared.
warning.
I knew I was supposed to say yes, but judging from the sounds made by the woman on the videotape and what I saw, what Robert wanted was going to hurt. All right then. Robert pulled his lips tighter. I thought you loved me enough, Sho. But maybe I'm the fool. Maybe I'm just some nigga you messing with. That's fucked up, Sho. Nodding at his own statement, he slid to the other end of the couch where we both sat and dialed his cell phone. He put the call on speakerphone as soon as someone answered. I couldn't place her voice. Giving directions to the voice on the line, Robert's tone was playful but commanding, and his expectations were clear. He hung up and threw his phone down. It almost hit me. This is why you shouldn't tell Daddy no. I started biting the skin around my pointer finger and thumb because the nails were already gone. I knew she would be in soon. She was probably in the vocal booth, and Robert instructed her to get ready in the closet at the back of that room. A door at the back of the closet led to the little room we were in. Robert was rolling his neck and loosening his shoulders to get ready for her arrival. 3 minutes later, someone knocked on the door between the vocal booth closet and the secret room where we were. Robert got up, his jeans now sagging below his naked behind, and walked to the door. He tied a blindfold on a young woman before she could see me in the dim light of our windowless box of a room. She had on a bra, but no panties, and her hair was pulled into 2 hasty pigtails. Robert guided her to the couch and positioned her. As I sat 3 feet from them, I felt queasy and anxious. Robert seemed fixated on all that was happening with the blindfolded girl. It was clear that I had been dismissed. When the action finally slowed, Robert turned his face toward me. You see what she does for me? He slung his words at me over the sounds of her groans, his breath as hot and funky as the thick air around us. Jealousy, insecurity, and fear were a toxic soup that soaked through me and short-circuited my brain. That's how I learned that even if I wanted to say no, it felt safer for my mental health to go along with his program and say yes. It's wild how your abuser can compel your yes and then make you believe it was your choice. And it tears down your sense of self because you start to believe that their fetishes are yours since you're the one performing those vile actions. It's a mindfuck. My adult self had to learn to release all those lies and the shame that came with them. I did not want what Robert wanted. He was always playing the long game with me. Forcing me to execute on his short-term steps was designed to get me to his goal of my being completely submissive to his will and dependent on him for every aspect of who I was. That kind of dependency breeds unwavering loyalty, even if you feel like shit doing it. For as much as I thought of myself to be a welcome presence at Robert's studio because I was his goddaughter, I was still very much out of my element in the space. Full of adult language, activities, and preoccupations, the studio housed as many eyes and ears as it did secrets. I was too young and too preoccupied with keeping track of the lies that filled my mouth to notice. My words and actions were for an audience of one. If Robert seemed pleased that I had managed to say the right things to his celebrity visitors and say very little to everyone else, then Robert was the only person to whom I could voice my relief in private. If I messed up, Robert's manipulative and biting words crushed my spirit and kept me needy for his approval. Though there were many folks on payroll at Robert's studio, the chocolate factory, I didn't know who was paying enough attention to me to suss out what was going on. Their poker faces kept me ignorant, but folks knew when I was around. And Unsparkle, who no longer had any business at Robert's studio, still had some of her people who were her eyes and ears there and would answer her questions. Apparently, many of her questions were about me. Unsparkle came to know that I was spending lots of time at the studio, sometimes without my dad being there at all. As a young woman navigating the messy R&B music business and who had once been Robert's protege, in addition to being one of his lovers, Unsparkle had spent many hours in the rooms of many studios and knew something about what could happen during all of those unsupervised hours. She wasn't wrong. I don't know who my dad was talking to at Robert's studio, if anyone, what he saw, or if he knew about the world that Unsparkle had introduced me to. In one of our conversations before he passed away in 2021, Dad explained to me that he was naive, willfully ignorant of the possibilities of what could have been going on, because the reality that he had a steady paycheck as a session guitarist for Robert and that I seemed to be happy drowned out everything else. As a man who has spent decades carving out a living in support of his family by working in studios and on stages with Christian and secular artists alike, my dad had learned not to believe everything he heard. Gossip stuck to the walls like glue in the music industry, but he chose to keep his head above the fray and sometimes stuck in the sand, rather than be dragged in the swirl of messiness. Dad knew that lies circulated quicker than the truth, and most of it wasn't his business anyway. So he played his guitar and then left. As far as Dad was concerned, our family's association with Robert Kelly was a net positive. Dad had a gig, Sparkle had an album, and I had a godfather. Dad didn't know as much as I did about what had made Unsparkle's business relationship with Robert explode. She didn't tell him, and he knew better than to ask. Sure, Dad, like the rest of Chicago and the world, had heard the rumor that Robert had married his artist, Aaliyah, when she was 15. But again, he didn't think it had legs, so he didn't put any stock in it. What Dad had witnessed firsthand was that Robert had given his life to Christ and committed to being a better man. Sure, Robert's music was suggestive, but plenty of performing artists had a persona that differed from who they really were. So Dad explained, most times, he paid little attention to the whispers in the peanut gallery. My teenage self didn't know most of this, but at the time, I was happy for Dad's willful ignorance. There was one instance, however, when Dad traded in that ignorance for a moment of discernment. My family was sitting in our living room, having our regular weekly Bible study. I was curled up on our cozy navy blue sofa, with little Greg snuggled up beside me. My mom was his bookend, and we all sat across from Dad. I had just finished reading aloud the scripture Dad told me to, and he was going over the lesson in the Bible. His voice was so forceful that I straightened my back and put my feet on the floor. My mind could barely think about what he was saying, just that he said it with so much conviction. Then Dad snapped his Bible shut and told us to bow our heads in a posture of submission to God. Dad started. His voice dipped in the blood of the Lamb. Father God, we come against every spirit of perversion and deception that is claiming this modern age. By the power of the Holy Spirit, I rebuke them in the name of Jesus. My head bowed. I shuddered under the weight of my dad's prayer. I bowed lower. We rebuke the hand of the enemy on our son and especially our daughter, Lord. We lay every sin of sexual immorality, of coveting, and of lying at your feet, dear Jesus. Dad's words injected fear into my very soul. I felt my spirit wrestling inside of me. With Bible study and my father's prayer done, I hurriedly excused myself from the room. I felt naked, like Dad had told me all about myself. With his words, he tore off every lie I had rehearsed and repeated to them. I couldn't bear to have any of them look at me and see me stripped of all my lies about the true nature of my relationship with Robert. For as exposed as I felt by your prayer that day, Dad, I wish that version of you, full of holy boldness and speaking truth to power, would have shown up like that more often. I wish you had taken more space and crowded out Robert's authority over me, asserting that our family's rules still applied to me, even when I was in his space. I wish you had insisted that you enter Robert's environment, meet his wife and child, and see where I would be sleeping during sleepovers. I wish your intuition had kicked in when I seemed uncomfortable and would refuse to speak or to even acknowledge any man who was not you or Robert. I wish you had been suspicious enough to catch Robert in the act of making sneaky sexual gestures towards me while I fidgeted, unable to respond and afraid someone might see. I wish you had noticed the confusion that lurked behind my smiles and the distress that creased my forehead and my uncharacteristic silence. Dad, I never doubted your love for me. I just wish that your love could have pushed past your fear and fought for me. 2 weeks later, my parents and I had another come to Jesus meeting. The knock on my bedroom door was insistent. Come in here now. Dad's voice had more bass in it than usual. He hadn't asked me to come. He told me. I hurried off the phone and went to the living room. Where's little Greg? I wondered. It was practically dinner time. Why wasn't he home? He's spending the night with Granny. Mom answered from where she rocked herself on the sofa. Her voice was raw and her face was puffy from recently cried tears. I looked at Dad. His face was stamped with anger. He perched at the edge of his favorite chair. I pushed myself into the far corner of the blue sofa to get as far away from Mom and Dad as possible. Dad sighed. Your Aunt Stephanie has been in touch with the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, Reshona. They've launched an investigation. Seems she thinks you may be involved in some indecent sexual activity at Robert's studio, and it's with Robert. What do you have to say about that, Reshona? My mouth hung open in shock. Luckily, my mother muttered something into the dead air. I can't believe she called DCFS on us. That's not how we handle things. Why is she taking her problems out on us? Valerie? Reshona hasn't answered. They both looked at me. That's crazy. How dare she do that? I wrestled my real emotions into something that looked like anger. I looked from my mom to Dad. Finding a more receptive expression for my mother, I turned back to her. I mean, he's my godfather. She's the one who suggested it. I know she's mad that things broke bad with them. I mean, with her business with him. But he's still my godfather. I let my tears fall freely. So you're telling me that none of that is true? Dad twitched from the effort of looking at me through his discomfort. Mom was wringing her hands. Of course not. Latching onto Unsparkle's indiscretion again, I turned back to my mom. Why would Unsparkle say that? Why would she call DCFS? That's crazy. Dad didn't answer my question because he couldn't. I'm talking to you like this, Reshona, because I want you to remember you weren't raised that way. There is no blessing in cheating with another woman's husband. I am not cheating on anybody. They're my godparents, Robert and Andrea. I play with their kid. What's the problem with that? I can't say the same for Unsparkle, but I'm not doing anything wrong. I worked myself into a nearly hysterical anger, parroting all the lies Robert had drummed into my head, without missing a beat. We've never been intimate. We've never even been alone together, so there's never been an opportunity for something like that. Andrea is my godmother, and their daughter is like my own sister. My love and loyalty lie with them. As Robert had instructed me, I weaved the few threads of truth into the dense fabric of lies seamlessly. And because he had rehearsed me so many times, I knew how to coordinate my facial expressions and body language with my words so that I could convincingly deflect their every suspicion. That damn Stephanie, she's gonna mess around and have our children taken from us. Valerie, nobody's taking anybody. That's what happens when the law gets all mixed up in family concerns, especially black families. Stephanie knows that. Righteous anger rolled off my mother in waves. Is this conversation over? I borrowed Mom's righteous indignation. For now. Dad's voice had been reduced to a whisper. I stormed out of the living room and marched straight to my bedroom, resisting the urge to slam my door, since that was my mom's pet peeve. I couldn't afford to make her angry with me, since she was my biggest ally. Then I grabbed my phone, crawled into the bottom of my closet, and called Robert. Who else was I going to run to? My parents were distraught. Dad's deflated posture and Mom's tears made it clear to me just how much it crushed them to imagine the possibility that their 15-year-old daughter could be sexually entangled with Robert. We had finished our first conversation, but Mom and Dad had more questions. With fresh lies in my mouth, I was emphatic in my denials and distressed that they could even entertain any accusation of Robert hurting me. Dad, don't you remember when you were feeling so stressed out because Grandpa Bo was sick and Robert gave us the gift of a nice dinner at the restaurant you wanted to try? Of course, Dad nodded, the memory dampening his eyes with tears. It was just what the doctor ordered. Exactly. That's who Robert is to us. He's thoughtful. He thinks of our family as his own. I turned and looked at Mom. How can you all of a sudden call him a monster? How can you accept his kindness and all the ways he's tried to create nice experiences for us and then accuse him of something Unsparkle made up? Mom's face was crisscrossed with sorrow. That's not what we're doing, Reshona. Then what are you doing? I made my face look more pained than hers. We had to ask, Reshona. You're our daughter, and these are serious accusations, even if they are from Stephanie. We can't just ignore them. Not wanting even one word of what she heard from Unsparkle to be true.
AOBD, I don't
Mom
know if
sounded
I
like she was trying
I
to
don't
convince
know
herself.
if I heard. So I don't know if I heard it like that. I want to say well okay, so I don't know if I heard it exactly like that, but I just want to say here that Sparkle, like I said, is the reason all of this is going on. And because Sparkle lost her career because she was sleeping with somebody else and also was sleeping with R. Kelly, right? But Sparkle is definitely the person who connected Reshona to R. Kelly and then want to turn around and call CPS. Now, as far as the father goes, you're gonna make me have to listen to that again, cause I don't yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that again. I want to see if cause if he did say that, that went right over my head. But the mere fact that she was able to manipulate them because R. Kelly groomed her and told her what to say, for every case that they had, the parents decided to believe there was nothing going on over there because she was around Andrea, and she used to be with Andrea a lot, but Andrea had no idea. about what. You want me to rewind? I can. Let me just put it back, push it back a little bit. AOBD. Let me see. Let's see. All right. Let's see. I'll push it back.
I was emphatic in my denials and distressed that they could even entertain
Hold on. We got to go back a little further.
me so many times. I knew how to coordinate my facial expressions and body language
I want to go back to when the father first starts asking.
with her business with him, but he's still my godfather. I let my tears fall freely.
Hold on. Didn't go back far enough.
I'm here now. Dad's voice had more bass
All
in
right. Here
it
it
than
goes.
usual.
Let's listen.
He hadn't asked me to come. He told me. I hurried off the phone and went to the living room. Where's little Greg? I wondered. It was practically dinner time. Why wasn't he home? He's spending the night with Granny. Mom answered from where she rocked herself on the sofa. Her voice was raw and her face was puffy from recently cried tears. I looked at Dad. His face was stamped with anger. He perched at the edge of his favorite chair. I pushed myself into the far corner of the blue sofa to get as far away from Mom and Dad as possible. Dad sighed. Your Aunt Stephanie has been in touch with the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, Reshona. They've launched an investigation. Seems she thinks you may be involved in some indecent sexual activity at Robert's studio, and it's with Robert. What do you have to say about that, Reshona? My mouth hung open in shock. Luckily, my mother muttered something into the dead air. I can't believe she called DCFS on us. That's not how we handle things. Why is she taking her problems out on us? Valerie? Reshona hasn't answered. They both looked at me. That's crazy. How dare she do that? I wrestled my real emotions into something that looked like anger. I looked from my mom to Dad. Finding a more receptive expression for my mother, I turned back to her. I mean, he's my godfather. She's the one who suggested it. I know she's mad that things broke bad with them. I mean, with her business with him. But he's still my godfather. I let my tears fall freely. So you're telling me that none of that is true? Dad twitched from the effort of looking at me through his discomfort. Mom was wringing her hands. Of course not. Latching onto Unsparkle's indiscretion again, I turned back to my mom. Why would Unsparkle say that? Why would she call DCFS? That's crazy. Dad didn't answer my question because he couldn't. I'm talking to you like this, Reshona, because I want you to remember you weren't raised that way. There is no blessing in cheating with another woman's husband. I am not cheating on anybody.
Right there.
They're my godparents, Robert and Andrea. I play with their kid. What's the problem with that? I can't say the same for Unsparkle, but I'm not doing anything.
Oh, I get it. I get it. So I just heard it. Yeah, he did put the emphasis on her messing with another man's husband versus saying it is wrong for you to be messing with Robert because of his age, you're underage, and all that other stuff. So he did put more emphasis on he's somebody else's husband. All right. Thank you for that, AOBD. So we got the clarification, and you are, yeah, that one passed me. Okay, let's go.
Wrong. I worked myself into a nearly hysterical anger, parroting all the lies Robert had drummed into my head, without missing a beat. We've never been intimate. We've never even been alone together, so there's never been an opportunity for something like that. Andrea is my godmother, and their daughter is like my own sister. My love and loyalty lie with them. As Robert had instructed me, I weaved the few threads of truth into the dense fabric of lies seamlessly. And because he had rehearsed me so many times, I knew how to coordinate my facial expressions and body language with my words so that I could convincingly deflect their every suspicion. That damn Stephanie, she's gonna mess around and have our children taken from us. Valerie, nobody's taking anybody. That's what happens when the law gets all mixed up in family concerns, especially Black families. Stephanie knows that. Righteous anger rolled off my mother in waves. Is this conversation over? I borrowed Mom's righteous indignation. For now. Dad's voice had been reduced to a whisper. I stormed out of the living room and marched straight to my bedroom, resisting the urge to slam my door, since that was my mom's pet peeve. I couldn't afford to make her angry with me, since she was my
12.
biggest ally. Then I grabbed my
At
phone,
this stage, she
crawled
was
into the
15.
bottom of my closet,
But she was
and
12
called
when it
Robert.
started.
Who else was I going to run to? My parents were distraught. Dad's deflated posture and Mom's tears made it clear to me just how much it crushed them to imagine the possibility that their 15-year-old daughter could be sexually entangled with Robert. We had finished our first conversation, but Mom and Dad had more questions. With fresh lies in my mouth, I was emphatic in my denials and distressed that they could even entertain any accusation of Robert hurting me. Dad, don't you remember when you were feeling so stressed out because Grandpa Bo was sick and Robert gave us the gift of a nice dinner at the restaurant you wanted to try? Of course, Dad nodded, the memory dampening his eyes with tears. It was just what the doctor ordered. Exactly. That's who Robert is to us. He's thoughtful. He thinks of our family as his own. I turned and looked at Mom. How can you all of a sudden call him a monster? How can you accept his kindness and all the ways he's tried to create nice experiences for us and then accuse him of something Unsparkle made up? Mom's face was crisscrossed with sorrow. That's not what we're doing, Reshona. Then what are you doing? I made my face look more pain than hers. We had to ask, Reshona. You're our daughter, and these are serious accusations. Even if they are from Stephanie, we can't just ignore them. Not wanting even one word of what she heard from Unsparkle to be true, Mom sounded like she was trying to convince herself. Well, I answered you, okay? I glanced at Dad's face again. He looked conflicted. I couldn't stand to look at him. Can I go to my room? Mom waved her hand. My parents didn't say anything else to me. They wanted to believe me, to believe the words Robert had given me. Robert wanted my parents to feel a sense of guilt and indebtedness for even doubting him, and they did. As quickly as these allegations intruded into our lives, my parents wrapped their arms tightly around our family of 4 and faced them down, complete with our ironclad agreement about all the necessary alibis. I was relieved. Robert was proud of me. I passed my most difficult loyalty test to date. I had stood up for our love, and now Mom, Dad, Robert, and I all had Unsparkle in our crosshairs. My parents had an obvious interest in proving all these allegations to be false. At 15, I wasn't focused on this aspect of things beyond what they said, that Sparkle's reckless allegations could rip both me and my little brother away from my parents and land us in the foster care system. When I talked to Robert, he put flesh on the bones of his dire concerns. If the allegations were substantiated enough to result in charges against him, he could lose his career and family and end up in jail. I didn't want either of those things to happen. I was clear that my convincing lies were the only things that stood in the way of my entire life falling down around me. Less clear at the time, but surely clear to both my parents and Robert, was the fact that the adults around me could be severely punished if the DCFS investigation amounted to anything. Of course, Robert could be found guilty of sexual abuse of a minor. But if folks in Robert's orbit, or outside of it, Unsparkle included, testified in family court that my dad would leave me at the studio without him, he could have had a lot of explaining to do. And if it came out that my parents dropped me off for sleepovers at Robert's house when they had never seen the inside of his house or met my godmother, Andrea, no one would have cared that they were trying to respect how protective Robert was of his wife, daughter, and their personal space. Mom and dad could have been found guilty of child neglect. As an adult and a mother myself, I now understand how scary these allegations must have been. They loved my brother and me, no doubt. But now a cloud hung over their parenting of me, and the custody they had of both their children was in jeopardy. Unfortunately, my parents were still far away from allowing themselves to believe that the love Robert showed our family, up to and including my dad's job as his musician, had been him grooming them to trust him and see only the best in him. They were in defense mode, which made it impossible for them to consider that they might have been duped. For reasons I didn't know then, it was easier for them to feel betrayed by Unsparkle than succored by Robert. After all, she was the one who had chosen to air our alleged dirty laundry and jeopardize our family unit in the process. I thought this was what had driven the wedge between Unsparkle and my mother. But they had chosen sides about Robert well before DCFS got involved. It would be decades before I learned that Mom knew a bit about Unsparkle and Robert's sexual intimacy through her sister talk, and that Unsparkle had explained that Robert kicked her off his record label after her on-the-low situation with her boyfriend blew up. Once she was ousted, Unsparkle believed her whole family should have stepped right along with her. She felt that having me still gallivanting around the studio as his goddaughter, while my dad continued as one of his musicians, was a betrayal of our blood relationship with her. Mom didn't see it that way. Sure, Robert was messy, and he did Unsparkle dirty. But what had Unsparkle thought would happen? She had to have known that when sexual and professional relationships get intertwined, pulling them back apart is usually a hot garbage mess. So as far as Mom was concerned, Unsparkle was wrong to expect her family to break ranks with Robert because her illicit entanglement with him went south. That initial dispute between Mom and Unsparkle the year before set the stage for this next showdown between them. Already suspicious of Unsparkle, Mom now smelled a rat. How could it be that Robert was a blessing to our family when Unsparkle's career was flourishing, but now that they were on the outs, all of a sudden he's molesting me? The timing of Unsparkle's about-face struck Mom as a little too coincidental. Dad agreed that Unsparkle was an unreliable messenger, so he was equally skeptical. He also knew that for as much as Unsparkle didn't like folks messing with her money, she seemed willing to mess with Dad's, a point that left a sour taste in his mouth. And because he usually walked in the opposite direction of confrontation, I think he found it easier to agree with Mom and join in her frustration with her sister, rather than think the worst of Robert and have to confront what it meant that his boss, who acted like he liked him, might have been exploiting his daughter right under his nose. My dazed and confused self had already parted ways with the truth, so I latched on to my parents' distrust of Unsparkle's intentions. Then Robert explained it was better for me, for us, if my parents directed their anger at Unsparkle for her lack of concern for our family. He underscored his point with his own dose of sparkle bashing. Look, Sho, I know you love your aunt and all, but she's an angry woman who wants payback from me. Unlucky for you, she don't mind throwing you under the bus for it. Under the bus? I was already upset, and now Robert was scaring me. She don't mind if you suffer because of our beef, because she got a beef with me. My understanding came with a punch to the gut. I'm sorry, Sho. Betrayal was a mofo. Ask me how I know. Mom and I sat at the kitchen table when she said the same thing in her own way. Her tone was more measured, but no less direct. Reshona, I'm afraid your Aunt Stephanie, Jess wasn't thinking about how much trouble she could create for us all. Her career's been struggling ever since her first album came out, so she's scared and worried. I get that. But if she's trying to make herself feel better about things, this is not the way to do it. Mom patted my arm. I didn't know how to feel. Was she jealous of me? I knew she had stirred up feelings of jealousy and competition in me a couple of years before I could name what those feelings were. I knew she was once sleeping with Robert, and now I was. I knew I had spilled the secret about her boyfriend when she warned me not to, and that her worst fears came true. Maybe she was angry at me, willing to let my suffering be collateral damage for what she felt Robert had done to her. The truth was more complex than what my 15-year-old self could comprehend. All I knew was that since Unsparkle didn't care enough about me and my family to protect us, her concerns were bogus at best. Sometimes you're not the target. Sometimes your weak spots are in their blind spots. Sometimes your pain triggers theirs. Sometimes their anger is deflection. Part 2.
All right.
Bag
So
lady.
she's going into part 2 of the book, and that's where I'm going to end it today. I do want to give an update about D4VD, but I'm not going to do it in this video. I'm going to set it up to do a quick live after this one. There has been some updates in the David case, D4VD, if you will. In the unaliving of Celeste Hernandez Rivas. So I'll set that up, and I'm probably going to come right back on and bring you guys up to speed on what's going on in that case. So we're going to end it here. She was able to persuade her mother and father nothing was going on with Robert. She also used Andrea Kelly as a way to say, that's my godmother. She used the child that they had, and basically saying, when I'm over there, I'm playing with them. And basically, Sparkle, you're the reason all of this is going on. So, well, R. Kelly is manipulative, and this was set up just right, because when he started messing with Reshona, he continued his relationship with Sparkle. Sparkle ain't coming out here telling all that, is she? I don't want to hear nothing Sparkle got to say, because this would never have happened if you hadn't introduced, not just introduced, if you hadn't told this young lady, next time we're in the studio, ask R. Kelly to be godfather, sit on his lap, rub his head while doing it. So she is to blame. All the tears all over the place. Like I said, I don't want to hear it. Don't believe it. Sparkle, you're trash. And, her career was stagnant after that. She's talented, but you had to pay somewhere. And now you're sitting around acting stupid. So you went from telling her to sit on his lap and rub his head to calling CPS. Okay, you were the wrong, right message, wrong messenger. Because had it not been for you, they wouldn't even be in this spot. And then only to find out that you kept going on and on and on, trying to make it seem like you're the hero. Oh, and I know, and my mother, and I've been trying to tell my sister and my brother, but no, we got to keep going back to the fact that you told this young lady to ask R. Kelly to be her godfather, sit on his lap and rub his head. You talked to this lady, this young girl at the age of 12, about staying ready just in case she is getting ready for some type of sexual relationship, so she don't have to get ready. That was all you. Why were you having those inappropriate conversations with her? So Sparkle, something to me is just saying that Sparkle and R. Kelly had a conversation, and in the conversation, he basically told Sparkle, "Get her over here to me." So the way Sparkle makes the story seem is that her niece was with her going to the studio, and then all of a sudden she just found out that her niece was going there by herself. Hogwash, Sparkle. We don't believe it. So the fact that she had been telling Reshona Lafair's story all of this time, she's upset about that. So that's why she finally had the courage to write the book so she could come out here and tell her story on her own. All right. So we're gonna pick this back up on another live, but I've been here 1 hour 35 minutes, and please hit the like button as a free way to support the show. Subscribe if you aren't. Leave a comment. Those are all free ways to support the show, and share the video. That's another free way you can support the show. So I'm going to leave you like I always leave you, bringing awareness that men get breast cancer too. Because of the stigma surrounding the word breast, we have changed the word to peck and or chest cancer over here on the Survivor Speaks channel. So I'm going to continue to bring awareness that men get breast cancer too. And to all of my ladies, please make sure you're getting your mammograms, filling on your boobies to make sure that you are all right. All right. And don't you dare let anyone come into your house and disrupt the peace that passes all understanding. I am Survivor Speak. I'll see you guys in a little while. I'm going to go live again, and we're going to talk about the D4VD case. So I'll see you then. Peace. Peace out. Peace out.
If you have made it to the end of the video, you are the real MVP. So don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.